Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Last year was last couple of years has been quite a different environment, right? Our budget was all over the place. Now, yes, you mentioned inflation that increased the cost, but in general, there was a increase in hardware costs, licensing costs, subscription costs, and certain costs within IT does not change. It continues to go up, right, year after year. And whether my budget allows for it or not, I have to find savings in other areas, or being able to save in certain areas or reduce some projects that we're planning to do, uh, more of a wants projects versus a needs projects, right? There's a lot of needs projects that needs to happen. If we're growing as a company, we need to buy more licenses, we need to buy more equipment, we need more hardware, we need more capacity. Not necessarily just because the prices are going up, the cost goes up, uh, but just because the revenue does not indicate of the need of the budget growing, necessarily allowing us to reduce the cost where we can't really reduce the cost. So we try to reduce it where we can. Now, what we've seen is um, last year there's quite a bit uptake and increase. What I've seen this year is more or less the inflation rate has adjusted a little bit from the pricing that I've seen. We were already preview to some areas that will be increasing, that we knew we were going to be increasing. So we were able to increase the budget there. But what you have on the screen there, it's pretty much where we're at, right? And I think 4.3%, you have it from last year on average. We're pretty much flat from last year to this year. Our budget has stayed consistent in the same amount. Our spending, the projected spending, and I'd say projected because 2024 just started. We're in Q1. Projected spending is about the same as what we'll have last year.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So you're about flat, right? So this seems kind of
Yes, we're about flat.
Flat for you. And I guess in terms of, because costs go up, staying flat is kind of a tightening of the belt in some areas of the business, I assume. Have you seen any of these effects? I'm kind of putting on the screen another question we asked you. For those who did say they were decreasing their IT spend, which you said you were flat, it looks like reducing staffing costs is up, stopping and delaying new projects, reducing hardware spend and consulting spending. Are you seeing any of these sorts of impacts in your business? Are you taking more of a critical eye on outsourcing and consulting, or have you frozen hiring or delayed promotions, that kind of thing? I'm kind of curious if any of those effects are there.
Yeah, so I mean, good question. When it comes to when the business is growing, we have to hire staff, and that's inevitable at this stage, right? We have to hire the staff. When we hire staff, the IT spending increases because there's the IT cost, not just the salary of the staff or what we're paying these people to work for the organization. One of the aspects that's not really accounted for is the cost of technology for that specific staff, right? So I highlighted for the various departments as well. So you're going to be hiring 5 staff. It's not just their salary. You have to account for X amount of dollars per staff for technology requirement that includes hardware and software, and the various licensing and the various softwares that they would need for that environment, depending on their functions. So in those areas we can't really reduce costs. That's an increased cost. It's we call it some costs in IT, and it continues to grow. Where we can try to do a reduction of costs is some of the planned projects. Look at the roadmap and say, okay, what is planned? What can we defer to reduce the cost this year, and perhaps stretch it over a number of years, or allow for an extra delay costs, and allow for extra time, so maybe we can manage the cost better along the way. Instead of doing the project in 1 year, we'll do it in 2 years, right? The other thing we've done is we look at outsourcing as an option as well, especially in my organization. We're a specialist in our domain, in our industry. We're not an IT specialist, IT type of specialist organization. When we need expertise, we go to the vendors because we don't hire the staff. We are a very lean IT organization. So we will hire expertise through vendors to be able to reduce costs. Sometimes we include that as part of a project or deployment and say, we'll get that expertise, get our internal staff trained. The other thing is we look at what we're trying to deploy or what projects are coming up. and look at the option of whether or not we can learn how to do this by, seeing what's available online, maybe sending somebody on training, or, having our in-house staff do it, right?
Yeah.
And a good example of that I can give you is we just implemented a new ITSM system that went live January 15th. And as part of the purchase of the cost, there was implementation cost, which I was able to reduce from the vendor because the tool itself is very intuitive and easy to learn. And there's so much documentation online that we took it ourselves, read the documentation, do our own internal training, and we were able to implement that tool without having to pay the cost of implementation. So we're able to implement the tool. Obviously, we had to pay for the licensing of the tool, but at least reduce the cost when it came to the implementation aspect and the deployment of it, right? So that helps us balance the budget quite a bit, and trying to stay on track.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot about the internal training and upskilling is sort of becoming a higher priority as budgets gets tighter. Is how can we just upskill or retrain our employees to do more so we can cut off things like those implementation costs or reliance on outsourcing. So yeah, we've heard that echoed a few times, and I'm just curious off the cuff, are you using? You said you went to an industry conference or an vendor conference, or used the documentation, but are there particular sites that you found helpful, perhaps like LinkedIn Learning, or which used to be lynda.com, or Coursera, or Pluralsight, or any of those types of sites? Any of those vendors ring a bell, or is it mostly just what the vendor
Yeah, no,
provides?
LinkedIn Learning is, we have a subscription to LinkedIn internally that we use, and LinkedIn Learning is quite useful, right? But we also use, depending on the vendor, depending on the company of the product that we implemented, sometimes they have their own documentations already ready in place,
Yeah.
right? Videos, and very intuitive videos, right? And just following through it. And if you have a question, then we just open a ticket with with their support team and say, okay, you know what? We're trying to do this. I'm following the steps and it's not working. Can you walk me through it, right? And that's how we learn to implement. And I think learning on the go is the best way of learning. It's one thing to tell somebody, you need to learn how to swim, for example. If I use that as an analogy here. The other thing is, if you throw someone in the deep end, they'll manage. They'll figure it out. Yeah, they'll struggle a little bit, but your instincts will kick in, and you'll be able to float, right? But eventually, you will learn how to do it better and better and better, right? The more you do it, the better you get at it. So we use those sites. A lot of it, also looking at online forums, right? Like Reddit. We're running into some issues. A lot of industry experts share a lot of insights in there, and if we're faced with the situations, like let's see if somebody else is facing the same situation as us, right? And we'll talk to industry experts in that way. Sometimes it's just talking to various vendors, and we'll get insights from them as well on that aspect.